Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to Beyond the Pitch. Myself, of course, joined with the magnificent Ian as always, and absolutely delighted to be joined with Tony Meola after the news that Jurgen Klinsmann has been sacked as US national team manager. We'll start out with you, Tony. Did this news come as a surprise to you, mate?
Well, first off, what's happening, guys? Glad to be on with you. Is it a surprise? I'm not quite sure. I don't think so. I think this has kind of been going on since the Costa Rica game. We've been hearing news about this, and oftentimes, as you guys know, you work in the media. I did for a little while, and where there's this much smoke, there's oftentimes a lot of fire. And I think it got to a point, at least from what I was reading, that if it didn't happen, Phil, it probably would have been a bigger surprise if it didn't happen. I think, they've probably done some research. I know it was probably difficult for Sunil Gulati. This was his guy. This was the guy that was going to take us to the next step. But we got to a point, and I said this before the World Cup, where I thought, only because what history has told us, not only here in the U.S., but around the world, that second cycles for national team managers haven't been all that successful. So I was a little bit surprised, not for any reason, not because it was Jurgen or anybody else, that we were already going into a second cycle. But, the move has been made. I think at this point, like most of these things, you look forward to where this national team can go, and obviously the first mission is to try and qualify for Russia, and they've really put themselves behind the eight ball.
Yeah, Tony, listen, this is incredible news coming from US Soccer right now about the firing of Jurgen Klinsmann. I think a lot of the media personnel were not too surprised about it, but football lovers of the game thought that he would be given a lot more of a longer term or a longer bit of time to sort the situation out, especially knowing how easy it is to qualify through the Hex, and the US have had so much success doing it over the recent years. Where did he go wrong, Tony? I mean, we know that he came in with a plan, and we know that he wanted to make sure that he took the US Soccer Federation to the next level with youth development, but I want to know from you what your opinion is, where he went wrong and why it went downhill.
I think, and I don't have any insight other than talk. I think there was finally enough frustration, for lack of a better term, and let's call it talking down to the U.S. soccer public. MLS is not good enough, and players need to go here, and our coaching is not good enough, and our system is not good enough. And, think I've been through U.S. soccer for 30 years. And, when I was coming up through the system, the Argentinian way was the way to do it. And then there was a time where in Bolivia, they were doing it the best way, and we were going to change that way. And then, you go through all these cycles. There was a time when the Portuguese youth national teams had won so much, and, after a while, your head is spinning. Now we're doing it the German way, and MLS is not good enough, and the players need to test themselves. And after a while, I think there just was a general frustration from the soccer community, and that certainly seemed to spill over to the players, and ultimately it's results that matter.
Did it annoy you, Tony, that this was happening from Jurgen Klinsmann, that he was criticizing the history of US soccer and the development? Did it annoy you?
Did it hurt me? No, because I would, I'd still be proud of what I'd done, what I did as a U.S. soccer player, not only at U.S. soccer, but just an American that played soccer. But yeah, I guess it was a little annoying. I guess I'm sort of an idealist in the way I want my national team coach to believe in the league. And if you don't believe in the league, tell me how to make it better.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me. I said all the time, by the time Jurgen Klinsmann leaves, whether it was tonight or whether it was after the 2018 World Cup, we need to know everything Jurgen Klinsmann knows about developing players. Not everything that he thinks is wrong. So what did we do in Germany? What did he do in Germany 10 years ago? And what did Yogi Löw now take over? And how do they develop players? Like, I still think if the people that have been closest to him don't know all of that information today, we've lost something from having Jurgen Klinsmann here.
Does he have a point though, Tony? Because when you look at the amount of kids we have playing the sport in this country, and you look at what the end product is, it's not good enough. We should be producing better players. We shouldn't be reduced to trying to pick kids off in foreign academies that are of American parentage. What is going wrong then with our youth system?
Well, look, go back 2002, right? And I use that team as an example, not because I was lucky enough to be in that group, but in 2002, when we were a kick away from getting to the semifinals of the World Cup against Germany, were we talking about there were development problems in the U.S.? Did we say there was a huge development problem? I think we sometimes make far too much. As a matter of fact, at that point, all we talked about is the future and how many great players are coming through. And, you know, I've been lucky enough the last couple of weeks to spend time with Omid Namazi, who's the head coach of the U18 national team. So I was just in Sunrise, Florida for about 10 days with that group, and I look, and heck, we're about as talented as you know, a lot of countries around the world. You know, they just came back from a tournament where they won the tournament. I believe it was in Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I still think there's a void between 18 and 20. We missed kind of a boat with those players. But, you know, the development, as you guys know, starts at 10, 11, 12 years old. And we're revamping everything, I feel like, again, for the youth national team programs. But, you know, so I don't look at it as there's this massive development problem. And quite honestly, how do you judge what's happened with the U.S. men's senior team with a development problem? Are those players not good enough to compete? Right. You know, in the World Cup a couple of years ago, they were good enough to get through the group of death and compete. You know, so I think for me, I separate the two a little bit. And I think there were just a different set of problems with the full senior team.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's ask you the $100 million question now. And I know the U.S. Soccer Federation is close to your heart, and obviously you follow it so closely. Who would be the right man to take over from Jurgen Klinsmann? Who's the one to lead the U.S. Soccer Federation into the next level, get the team to the World Cup, and potentially do well there? Who's your choice?
Well, I think it's going to be Bruce Arena. And we have so many young, talented coaches. You got Peter Vermees and Jason Kreis and Dominic Kinnear and guys who have done very, very well. You know, Oscar Perez, a guy that they throw his name around. And there are other guys as well. But I think when you talk about the position we're currently in, having lost in the Hex twice, you got to get someone that knows the Hex, that's competed in it, has competed in all of these countries, and knows sort of how to settle the ship a little bit. And I think, and I get the impression that if it is Bruce Arena, he goes in there and demands a sense of respect based on what he's done at the national team level. To bring somebody completely new to a national team program into the picture right now, I think is really detrimental. If this were the start of the cycle, I think that pool of coaches would be opened up a little bit. But given the circumstance we're in right now, I think Bruce Arena is probably the safest pair of hands. So
what does he bring to the U.S. soccer national team right now that's different from Jurgen Klinsmann that you think will take this team past the Hex, into World Cup qualifying, into the World Cup in Russia, and potentially do well there? What does Bruce Arena bring that Jurgen Klinsmann just couldn't do with this group of players?
Well, I wasn't ever in camp with Jurgen, so I'm not sure sort of the day-to-day communication that he had with the players. You know, Ian, when you kind of pull a guy to the side and say, hey, you know, man, you can do this. You know, what Bruce has been known to do is get the best out of players, and maybe more importantly, make players believe that they're better than they are. Right? Which as an athlete, you know, just think about a couple of instances. A couple of years ago, he called out Josie Altidore, right? And did he get the best out of Josie by doing that? And then he called out Clint Dempsey. And did he get the best out of Clint Dempsey by doing that? And then let's take it to a week or two ago, he called out Jim Brooks after the first game of the Hex. And did he get the best out of him the next game?
Right.
You know, so, and I would think, knowing that the answer is no. That's for me what Bruce brings to the table. This team to me looks. One of the guys I was working with the U18s texted me, and he only said, while the game was going on against Costa Rica, thoughts, ? And I put fragmented was the word I used. Don't ask me. I don't have a huge vocabulary, as you know. But that's what I typed back to him, fragmented, because that's what the team looked like to me.
Tony,
and I think that's what Bruce brings right away.
Bruce Arena said last week that he had a problem with players not being born in America playing for the U.S. national team. How does he answer for that comment to people that, like John Brooks, like Fabian Johnson? How does he look? Those guys are their future at the U.S. national team under threat? How does he address that issue?
Well, I think what I got out of it was that he has a problem with guys that come from a different country that aren't completely invested in what is happening here. And think about Timmy Chandler a couple of years ago, where Jurgen publicly went begging him, and he said he didn't want to play with the national team. And I think Bruce has a problem with that. And quite honestly, I would think players have a problem with that as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact context that it was said in, other than the fact that I do know Bruce. I've known him since my high school days when he started recruiting me. If you're one of the best 11 players, or if you're one of the best 18 players, and ultimately at the World Cup you're one of the best 22 players, you're going to be part of the group, and you will be invested in what the team is doing.
Just lastly, Tony, with what happened with Klinsmann, when he came in, he said the pyramid was upside down and he wanted to revamp our youth system. Do we stop everything that Klinsmann has done? Does Bruce Arena continue what Klinsmann has done? Does he refine it? Do you think with Klinsmann sacking, that puts an end to the attempted overhaul of youth football in this country?
What has he done? I guess that's the question, right? What has he really done?
Well, we've got the MLS academies. I don't know whether he's responsible for that or not, but it's a good question because it's probably a job in itself.
Right.
Yeah, it is, and that's always been a discussion, right? If you're a national team coach, is the rest of that stuff, do you really have enough time to do the rest of that stuff and try and make those changes? And that's a discussion to be had for sure. But do we revamp it? I don't know that we've really gone off course outside of the coaching education, which I think is a great thing, although it's becoming really, really expensive for coaches right now. I know I'm redoing now the new A senior course, really, really expensive, and I wonder how many guys that can be really good coaches, which I think is important for our country to have and continue to grow, because that will ultimately grow the player base. Like, we're Xing guys out of that. And this new pro license, which is a great one, which 13 guys were invited to, all MLS coaches plus national team coaches are in it now. You know, that license, from what I understand, is going to be $20,000 to get that license. And I think, I just think, how many guys that are probably really good coaches have that money just laying around in a box to get better at, and ultimately you're going to need it if you want to coach in Major League Soccer or any other league, any other professional league. And, we need those kind of guys to continue to develop players in this country. So it's some of the things are problematic, although I think a lot of it's getting better, but there's just some sort of kinks to work out.
I got one more for you, Tony, before you go. Are we guilty of seeing other development through the countries in CONCACAF region getting better, improving, that the competition is just becoming too strong, that maybe the US Soccer Federation from the top all the way down needs to improve faster than what they've been doing? Because we're seeing some real competition in CONCACAF now.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And quite honestly, if you look at the other night, a lot of MLS players on the opposite side of the ball from us.
That's right.
That are making. I'm not quite sure that this is an MLS issue. And I still look at that particular team and the way they've been going in. They just look disjointed to me. I think it was more of a team thing than it was a development thing. There's certainly enough talent there. There's enough talented players there. We're not 4 goals worse than Costa Rica. We were the other night. There's no doubt about it. Don't want to take anything But if we were 4 goals as a whole worse than Costa Rica, then we'd have to revamp the whole thing. But I don't think we have to. I think we're a lot closer than that. I think we just need a different energy right now, and hopefully that will come soon.
All right, Tony, I tell you, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming next from you. You've done fantastic as an analyst before on Sirius. We've seen what you did at beIN Sports, and then obviously taking your first role and step into coaching with Jacksonville. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next step is for you, Tony. Thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers, Tony. Thanks, mate.
Guys, and keep up the good work. I enjoy listening.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Take care.
All right.
Cheers. There you go. Very, very interesting comments, Ian, from Tony, of course. He knows Bruce Arena very, very well.
No.
And obviously he has his own views on Bruce. Talking to people throughout the game, he doesn't get a flattering amount of praise, shall we say.
No.
He's not, let me just say this, he's not a guy that commands universal respect. And to me, Ian, I fully understood why Klinsmann was sacked. I get it. But I think that given what we have at our disposal in this country, even if we get the best coach in the world, and we covered this last week, you're really going to affect minimal change because I think where the US ultimately it gets judged is in tournaments. And in tournaments, class tells. You can knock off a Brazil in a friendly. If you look back last year when Klinsmann had the result against Holland, and I think they had that period where they had a couple of brilliant wins in friendlies. And everyone
friendly games,
yeah, and everyone was talking about, this is amazing. We're doing great, but that can happen in friendlies. If you in tournaments where class really tells, I think that isn't going to change no matter who we have at our disposal.
No, I agree. It's a great point. I think going to the big tournaments is always going to be the focal point of US soccer success, and you will be judged on how much success you have in those big tournaments. Friendly games, I don't think matter too much except for development within the squad, getting your squad down to their 23 and choosing the right players. And we've seen him do a great job of friendly competition. He performed well. He chose right teams. He gave opportunities to youngsters, to veteran players. He had a good mix. But when it came to the big competition, I felt like some decisions that Jurgen Klinsmann made were very controversial decisions that upset a lot of people inside US soccer, outside of US soccer, within the squad. In particular, the one with Landon Donovan not going to the World Cup. That one I never understood why. I mean, this is an iconic figure in US soccer who could turn it on at the drop of a hat and really just score a goal when you needed it most. And we saw it before from Landon Donovan at the World Cup 2010 when he stepped up and scored a big goal. It was Algeria, I think it was, and knocked him right through. I mean, it was great to see. So to not take a player like that to a World Cup when you know that even though he's on the bench or not a first 11 player for you, I felt was a real disappointment. And I think that was his first real mistake as head coach of the US men's national team.
Well, especially if Bruce Arena is going to replace him, you can guarantee there's been some dialogue between Arena and Landon Donovan, who of course are very, very close. I think Bruce Arena has been angling for this job for a while, and I don't think he's going to get much resistance from the Galaxy in letting him go. I spoke to an individual in the game who would be quite close to Bruce Arena and quite close to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And asked him about Bruce Arena and what his views were. And his response to me was very telling. And he said to me, look, in the MLS today, you have to have more than just a good team of players. You have to have more than that now. You have to have tactical aptitude. You have to be adept. You have to have different things to your skill set. And he doesn't have them. And so if he's getting found out at MLS level for being tactically inept, then I would be concerned, Ian, about having a tactical fortitude and aptitude at international level. Look, the other part of this is, in Klinsmann's defence with Landon Donovan, Landon Donovan let Klinsmann down first by pulling out of those friendlies, or it was early on when he said he needed a break, right? When he was in the qualification process. Wasn't handled like Tim Howard handled his. Landon Donovan pulled out, let Klinsmann down first, and he paid for that mistake. That's where Klinsmann said, I'm going to get you back for that. And took a big decision. And ultimately, when you look at the game against Belgium, Chris Wondolowski misses a sitter, an absolute gilt-edged sitter, which would have put the US through. And of course, inevitably, you go back and say, what if this was Donovan? I honestly don't think not taking Landon Donovan had any impact on the US's progression. I think they'd have won it anyway. It was against a very good Belgium team. But I can understand why, in the dressing room, that would be a very unpopular decision. From what I've heard, Landon Donovan's quite popular in the US dressing room. And so I can understand why, when you're talking about collective morale, that would be an issue.
Well, first and foremost, talking about Bruce Arena, Tony just mentioned there what he likes to do as a coach. He's a player coach. He gets the players together. He may not be tactically or technically the best coach in Major League Soccer or even in US soccer's history, but his results are just phenomenal. He's such a successful coach. He always seems to get the best out of his players. He always seems to be there or thereabouts when it comes to the end of the season in Major League Soccer. He got US Soccer national team to a great stage in the World Cup where they were competing in the knockout stages. That's what you want. That's what you want to try and see. You want to see success from that. Klinsmann did that, yes, but did we think that the US men's national team were going to go further than where they did last World Cup? No, I didn't have any hope. Before that, with Bruce Arena, I actually believed that he could get that team to an amazing stage and potentially reach the semi-final, and you never quite know what could happen. What we see with the squad of players that are in the soccer system right now for the United States is a developmental issue, in my opinion. There's so many players. There's a lot of talent in the squads, all the way down to under 19s and below, where we know there is talent. But there's a big gap between what US soccer has and what the leading nations in Europe have. And that maybe comes down to what we're seeing domestically. Developmental-wise, Major League Soccer needs to take a bigger stance on giving US soccer players a chance to play at the highest level domestically. Tony made a great point just a moment ago that Costa Rican side had a lot of Major League Soccer players playing in that team. So they're getting first-team football ahead of a US soccer player who could potentially be getting experience, getting better, improving. Is the talent there? This is my problem. I don't think that the generation that is around right now, this squad of players, I don't think, and I've been criticized heavily right now on social media because I just put it out there, this player pool, I don't think is going forward. I think it is going backwards.
I agree with
the
you on
talent
that.
level before, Phil, back in 2002, before that even 98, was way better quality than what we're seeing right now.
100%. Listen, I'm also not a fan of we have to limit foreign players because they prohibit US players' growth. I don't care where you are. If you're good enough, you'll play. Simple as that. And if an average Cuban or an average Costa Rican's taking your place, it's because that talent isn't there. It's as simple as that. If you're a good American talent, you will play. It's as simple as that. No one's keeping you out of the team. Your value to that franchise as a good American talent is much greater than a Costa Rican or anybody else. Take a look at one of the smallest countries in the Americas, Uruguay. Uruguay has a population of 4 million people. They're getting it right. And yes, it's easy to say we're doing it wrong and not offer solutions. But, and we have said this, you have to integrate the culture of the country when you're talking about overhauling a system, because you have to take into consideration the mental side of this. You're also, and when in this country, you have unique challenges in competing with other sports that other countries, Chile, Uruguay, don't really have, right? So we have that problem. You have the other problem where the coach-to-player ratio is not good enough, inevitably, which leads to guys that don't really understand what they're doing, coaching kids, which ends up a disaster. We overcoach in this country because very individual creativity has nothing to do with coaching. Coaching's supposed to refine your game. Coaching's supposed to teach you the basics. It's supposed to make you a better player, not make you a player. There's certain things that just can't be coached. So we overcoach in this country for two reasons. Number one, every event a child does today is planned. Moms and dads, you've got play dates, you've got this. Kids don't play on their own anymore. The other part of this is when you have structured coaching, someone's getting paid, almost inevitably at the highest level. And so it's very difficult. You don't have pickup games at the park anymore. You don't have that creativity anymore. And that's a
crazy.
problem.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. All right, before we finish, I do want to touch upon the next coach who's going to come in for Jurgen Klinsmann and replace him. I do have it from a good source that Bruce Arena is very close to signing that contract and putting pen to paper. I'm not sure I agree with that move from US Soccer or Sunil Gulati, but yeah, it's been put out there pretty closely, and this is a good source that I'm getting it from, and I know you've heard it too, that he's very close to signing that contract and becoming the next coach. If it wasn't going to be Bruce Arena, I'd throw another name into the hat, and that would be Brad Friedel. Simply because he's a young, exciting coach. He's a coach who's got tremendous experience as a player. He knows US soccer inside out because he's played there. He's also coached at the under-19 level. And he is a guy who commands tremendous amount of respect. Now, it's untested, and it is a goalkeeper going into that role. But for me, what I've seen from Brad Friedel, and I've worked with him very closely at Fox over the last year and a bit, this is a great guy. He's a funny guy. He's a guy who's also serious when it needs to be. He works very hard. He prepares properly. And from what I've seen already working on my shows in particular, this guy knows the game. He knows how it should be played. He knows the insides and the outsides, the formations, and tactically, he is so smart. I think that's what US Soccer needs to take it to the next level. Maybe it's not the time for Brad Friedel right now. They might need that little bit of a desperate gap filler, which could be Bruce Arena. But I would like to see in the future Brad Friedel getting an opportunity to coach at this level.
Well, I think the key word here is timing. I think if Brad Friedel, like Tony was saying, if this is the start of the cycle, then you take a chance. But given where the US are at in the qualification process, I'm not sure they can afford to take a risk. But for me, Bruce Arena there's no imagination here, right? It's okay. He's an obvious candidate, but you know who in the USSF, the United States Soccer Federation, is going out looking at the top young coaches around the world, saying, "Here's our contingency plan. If Klinsmann doesn't work out, US should have been working on a contingency plan for the last year." and thinking, if Klinsmann doesn't work out, this is who we're going for. And it just looks like this is a lazy choice because he's the obvious choice. And the old saying in football, Ian, you never go back. It never works out when you go back. And so I just think it's a poor choice. I don't think Bruce Arena brings the US national team forward. And I think it's a choice where they'll give him a contract up to the World Cup, and that'll be it.
Isn't it fantastic we're getting the opportunity when breaking news goes down like this, that we can break it on the Kids Way app immediately? I mean, this is the place for people to go, the next generation, where we want to see the breaking news happening right now at this moment in time. Get out your cell phone, get out your iPad. Me and you can come on Beyond the Pitch and break news to everybody and talk to a World Cup veteran, superstar in Tony Meola, and share that news with everybody right as the news is breaking. It's quite incredible, and thanks to Kisway for all their support and making it happen.
We have our own show tonight later on, which you can catch absolutely Kisway. Folks, thanks for all the support on the Kisway app. Keep downloading that app. That means a lot to us. There's going to be so much content on here, so much exciting content. And a big thank you to the wonderful people at Kisway who are working so hard to bring us to you through various different means. And the people that are going to be on the show over the next coming weeks, we hope you enjoy. Thanks very much for all of those who've watched it on YouTube and watched it on Kisway. Keep downloading that app for us. And don't forget, if you download the app, follow BTP Live. That's really, really important. So that when we upload content, you get notified. So we will catch you later. Ian?
See you later, son.
All the best, folks.